Welcome back to Torah in 10, Parshas KiTetzei. I'm Jody Burkell, and it's so great to be here with you again today. What's the life-changing idea Rabbi Sack of blessed memory teaches us this week? He says, never be too much in a rush to stop and come to the aid of someone in need. He shares a true story that he and his wife Elaine heard as they were being driven to the Catskills. The driver shared with them that one Friday afternoon, he was making his way to the Catskills to meet his family for Shabbat when he saw a man wearing a kippah bending over his car at the side of the road. One of his tires was flat and he was about to change the wheel. So he pulled over to the roadside, went over to the man, helped him change the tire, and wished him a good Shabbos. The man thanked him and took his kippah off and put it in his pocket, to which the driver said to him, "Oh, you don't wear it all the time?" The man replied, "I'm not Jewish. I just know that if I'm wearing one of these, a Jew will stop and help me." Rabbi Sack shares this story because of its connection to the commandment in this week's Parsha. Do not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen on the side of the road and ignore it. Help him lift it up. This commandment, among many in this Parsha, open our eyes to an ideal society, one in which we would all want to belong, a place where people are good neighbors and where they're willing to help even a stranger in trouble. And when they see someone in need of any help, they don't walk by. This is part of a sociological principle called social capital, which is the wealth that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with the level of trust within a society. There's no price tag large enough for this, to know in life that we're surrounded by people who have our best interest at heart. Harvard sociologist Robert Putnam, famous for his article Bowling Alone, spoke about the decline in social capital in modern times. But in another, more recent study, he showed that indeed, social capital was alive and well, but more prevalent in certain locations, specifically religious communities, places of worship that still bring people together in shared belonging and mutual responsibility. He found that people who attend church or synagogue are more likely to give to charity, do volunteer work, give money to a homeless person, help a neighbor, spend time with someone who's feeling depressed, and even help someone find a job. Rabbi Sack says regular attendance at a house of study, a house of worship, turns out to be the best predictor of altruism and empathy. He says better than education, age, income, gender, or race. He says religion creates community. Community creates altruism, and altruism turns our focus on self to a focus of others. I have personally been a beneficiary of this truth. When a Chabad Rebbetzin reached out in a time of need and did a kindness for my family, my life was changed forever. Anyone who's experienced this knows exactly what I'm talking about. But Rabbi Sack warns us to make sure that religiosity doesn't get in the way. One of my favorite Hasidic stories, I know, I always tell Hasidic stories, but they're my favorites. So the Hasidim tell the story of the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, who was once so intent on his studies that he failed to hear the cries of his baby son. His father, Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, heard and went down and took the baby in his arms and rocked him till he went to sleep. Then he went down to his son, still deeply learning, and said, "My son, I don't know what you're studying, but it is not the study of Torah if it makes you deaf to the cry of a child." In the book, To Heal a Fractured World, Rabbi Sack says so beautifully, to live a life of faith is to hear the silent cry of those in need, the lonely and the poor, the sick and the disempowered, and to respond. For the world is not yet mended. There is still work to do, and God has empowered us to do it with Him, and for His faith in us. Our sages taught someone else's physical needs are my spiritual obligation. Now we can more deeply understand the commandment in our Parsha. Do not see and ignore. Basically, it's telling us there's no conflict between religious obligation and our obligation to humanity. They are one and the same. If our Torah learning is deafening us to the struggles, pain, and suffering around us, we're not learning Torah. Rebbetzin Dina Weinberg says, Torah is not education, Torah is transformation. The more Torah we learn, the more sensitive we should become. Life is so busy. Personally, I'm always running from one thing to the next. Rabbi Sack teaches us we need to slow down when we see someone in need, whatever the time pressure, and respond. There is no better investment of time than helping others. It may take only a few minutes, but its effects will last a lifetime for those we help and for us. I've missed you all so much. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.